Hey everyone, we're keeping you from last week. This is going to be a really exciting sort of interactive discussion. So much to talk about in terms of thinking about transformation around brand and sort of how do you lead it with brand over sort of what is a utility product. So with me today is Brad Morancheck, who's the head of global media for Kimberly Clark, as well as Josh Blacksmith, who's the head of the global digital consumer experience. Here's the big question. As a CPG, one of the major CPGs, and manufacturers of amazing brands, you guys all know Kimberly Clark, but we're talking about brands like Kleenex, and you buy Kotex, and Cottonelle, and Huggies. How do you think about the evolving role of digital, especially as we enter this new era of cookie deprecation? And could you focus on sort of consumer data and privacy? Like, how do you navigate what's happening today, which I think is the most challenging and exciting time as a major sort of CPG thinking about these challenges that are just on the horizon, and we're going to sort of knock into them probably in part of this year.
Yeah, really for us, digital is sort of a path to the consumer. It allows us to actually enable consumer centricity, and as a 150-year-old CPG manufacturer, as you can imagine, a lot of our historical focus has been on the customer, the retail partners. And what we found is that all CPG manufacturers, frankly, any manufacturer period, is facing a bit of an existential crisis if you lose sight of your end consumer. I think we have spent a lot of time and energy driving consumers to retail where we lose all control. And a consumer walks through the retailer's door, may choose to buy our product, might buy somebody else's product, might buy a private label product. And so it behooves us to actually get further upstream with the consumer in order to take greater control and ownership of that end-consumer relationship. So that starts for us by finding ways to create value around our brands that extend beyond just a lot of our brands' functional product attributes. Because on the face of it, if you think about some of our brands that you just listed, you think about Cottonelle, if you ask a consumer if they want to have a relationship with the toilet paper brand, you're going to get a lot of laughs. But if you think about the places, the spaces where our brands can lean in and create value, when you start talking about potty training, immediately there becomes this right space, this opportunity where our brands can create experiences around that moment that truly create value and give consumers a reason to engage in a more meaningful way.
Yeah, I'll take it from the cookieless front. So I was actually thinking, I was here when Google made the announcement that cookies were going away 4 years ago. In fact, coincidentally, I was literally meeting with Google, when the news hit. I looked at our people and they were like, kind of shrugged their shoulders, like, oh, that's news to us too. I guess that decision came from on high. So, 4 years we've been preparing for this, right? And I actually think it's an exciting time. I'm personally happy to see the cookie go away for a few reasons. I think it opens up new possibilities in terms of doing more things, more engaging things with consumers, kind of getting back to contextual targeting, a lot of things that are actually really sort of focused on delivering a better consumer experience, not just buying cheap hyper-targeted eyeballs. And the other thing, I don't know if this is so much about data privacy as much, but certainly in the new digital landscape, what we've been doing at Kimberly Clark, very proud of, is we've been taking steps to in-house a lot of our major ad tech. That was a challenge because you're talking about agreements that historically had existed with large holding companies, long-term agreements with really favorable pricing, and you go in as a company of one trying to negotiate favorable terms. That's not easy. But I think that the partners that we've worked with, or chosen to work with, they're excited about the prospect of owning that client relationship. We were able to find ways to make pricing work favorably, and then even beyond that, we've been able to really have strong joint business partnerships with them. So test and learn opportunities, road mapping, where are we trying to go as partners, what are the things that we want to accomplish globally. We're able to have those conversations, QBRs, all these kinds of things, whole new way of working with some of our big industry partners that wasn't happening just a few years ago.
And I think on the last point about sort of the evolving privacy landscape, I think we, at the beginning of our digital transformation journey about 4.5 years ago, we realized we needed to create a multi-tiered strategy. One, very focused on our owned asset, which is our zero and first-party data strategy. Second, very focused on identity, more broadly than our owned asset, which gets into sort of pseudonymized environments. And then the third, which has blown up, as everybody's seen over the last year or two, is the retail media environment, and what that means for all of us. And so, obviously, when we started that journey 4 years ago, we actually didn't have a chief privacy officer inside Kimberly Clark. And so it didn't take long for us to convince our board that it was an opportunity for us to actually set a new standard for what privacy can mean from our perspective. And through that lens, for us, it's not just about meeting what we kind of call the low bar of the regulatory environment, but it's really about setting a standard that allows us to set a new bar for how we want to create trust and transparency with our consumers through every experience we deliver.
Do you find that with the sort of application of the cookie and modern marketing practices, you're going to have to get closer to the consumer and really understand who they are, their data? You talked about how there's too much space between you and the consumer because that retailer really owns the relationship. How do you think about what does that look like in the future for CPG? Is all CPGs, is it just you guys? How is that going to evolve and change as you think about this year, next year, year after?
Yeah, so we can give you an example of some different ways that we found experiences that we want to build again to create value in those moments. It's not just us. I believe all CPG manufacturers that are facing a similar challenge. And some manufacturers have made a lot more inroads in terms of standing up at D2C, and there are plenty of other ways for us to get access to our own level of data, transactional data, and honestly, data that I think if I go back 10 years, there's no way I would have ever imagined that manufacturers could have access to some of the types of data that we do today. And so it's finding the right partnerships that give you the opportunity to actually build those experiences and get the closed loop, the transactional behavior. And more importantly, even building out an infrastructure that can support that, data and technology infrastructure that can support that, but also getting your people and your processes defined to take advantage of that new infrastructure and be able to sort of put it to use.
Yeah, and it's hiring a lot of new roles, right? I mean, data scientists and data analysts and positions that didn't exist before that to find their way into the org structure, kind of shifting the way that some of the more traditional research and analytics teams have worked. So
I want to move on and talk about what you touched on earlier, which is it's hard to ask the consumers to have a relationship with Continental toilet paper, but it makes sense for the consumer when they're doing potty training to look for that information, and you guys can power that. You gave a great example when we were catching up around something similar for another brand in terms of having that one-to-one relationship with the consumer. And it was, I think, in the UK. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what that was and how you sort of brought that to life?
Well, yeah, it's a great example. It was Kleenex in the UK, which again, the first thing, who wants to have a relationship with a facial tissue brand. But the way that the effort got started was, first of all, there was a new product launch, which was Kleenex Allergy in the UK. Dust-free, obviously, it was much more sensitive tissue for people suffering from allergies. And they started in the right way, which is sort of like design thinking, finding out where the consumer's needs were that were being unaddressed, and actually leverage search as a primary way to find out where those gaps were. So like no multi-$1,000 research studies, just digging into search and learning in the UK that pollen count information, especially hyper-localized pollen count information, was hard for people to find. It was a frustration point. So Kleenex actually stepped in, filled the gap, built, a function within our website called Kleenex Pollen Pal, Your Pollen Pal in the UK, where for registering, consumers were able to get direct information about the town or hamlet, in the UK that they live in, what the pollen counts were, customized it to the things that people are actually allergic to, so they kind of find out what those what the counts are for the things that take into account, with medication or things they might need to get through the day comfortably. Of course, with their Kleenex in hand as well. And that effort alone, I think, in the end, the website traffic was like 5x, it was a big number from what I had done.
Actually drove more traffic in 1 week organically than we'd seen in the prior 52 weeks in total. So year one required a significant amount of paid spend just to build some of the main authority around the experience. But then year two, we were able to get the benefit of that year one work.
Yeah, and there's one quick build too, is I think that was a key learning on activating that, was that while it came from the search insight and the gap was there, and consumers still aren't going to find it like totally on their own, like only through organic search. Maybe we could some that way, but to really scale it and make it as big as it was, the paid component was pretty critical. And we learned that honestly, like the hard way when it tried to roll out to some other markets that didn't have the resources for paid support, and it didn't go as far. So kind of going forward, we know if you want to have those types of efforts, it really does take a full paid, owned, earned, shared approach to launch successfully.
But the key was you realized there was an opportunity to have that direct consumer relationship. There was a need around content that was missing, and you were able to sort of associate that, sort of call it branded content that provided utility around the brand itself, and then that became an evergreen way to sort of continue to connect to consumers.
Yeah, that's right. And the reality is every one of our brands is going through significant work right now to define the moments that matter. So if we can get clear on where we believe we can create value around those moments, and then think about the role of every channel we have at our disposal to surround the consumer, drown out the competition, and make those our moments to lose, it allows us to, instead of spending sort of an inch deep and a mile wide across everything, do everything half as well as we could. Really getting focused and clear on those must-win moments because there's so much upside for our brand.
That's great. All right, so we're here at CES. The buzzword for this year, this last year, what has been AI, really generative AI. What is your focus? How do you see that integrating into what you're doing day to day in the marketing practice at Kimberly Clark? And how do you sort of see the utility of it moving forward if you were to fast forward a couple years?
Yeah, I think the first thing that we've done is actually really work to demystify AI. There's a video clip that I have that I'll share from time to time that was called The Thinking Machine. It was like 70 years ago, where an individual human was playing checkers against the computer. That was when AI started. Machine learning is a basic form of AI, and I think the fact that we're having this conversation so much right now is because generative AI took off in an unexpected way in 2023. But the reality is a lot of our marketing operations, we're using AI. A lot of teams just don't realize it because they think it's this new thing. It's actually been core to a lot of our business operations for years. So we use it from DCO, optimization, programmatic media, use it in send time optimization, personalization on our website. So I think that's sort of as we look ahead, really the generative AI space is one of those where we believe that the power comes from sort of the augmentation of the human, and we believe that a lot of the power of the role of AI is to be an assistant, not a replacement, but to actually augment the work that we're doing and ideally eliminate the mundane, but make the outputs even better. And so what we've seen with generative is that there are places where it can fast track a lot of our initiatives. So content for our website, if we notice that there are SEO gaps, we can actually have generative AI create the content and then bring a human touch in to make sure that it's following our brand tone and voice. But we're not at a place, and I don't think many are, we're not in a place where we want to give free reign to generative AI to create images because we don't want to end up with distorted faces and videos that look wonky. So we do believe as things continue to evolve, we want to be on the forefront of that. So a lot of our experimentation is, and a lot of conversations here this week, have been around exploring different future paths for how we can make sure that we're staying on top of that as it continues to evolve.
Yeah, and I think the build on that is exactly it. I think the conversations we've been able to have with partners, because we built strong relationships with those partners over the last few years as part of digital transformation. So we don't feel like we're going into this into the dark or having to reach out to outside agency source, only to kind of help us navigate through it, we're able to get like pretty high up with a lot of companies that are leading in the space and get their perspectives on how they're working with other companies to do it, help us with action plans, operationalizing ideas, and things like that. So and it's more than just a media function. We've got our digital technology services people are involved, the content people are involved, leadership is involved. So we're able to like engage in these conversations across all key areas that Kimberly Clark right now, because the way that we've built relationships over the last few years as part of digital transformation.
But the key there is, from what I'm listening, is that it's all the workflow. It's going to make your function better. It's not really replacing, it's just facilitating, making what you're doing faster, easier, better.
Yeah,
cheaper.
And cheaper. And there are, I'd say there are places where the conversation about replacing workforce, obviously it's a touchy subject, but you think about call centers, customer contact centers, and the ability for AI and bots to sort of play more of an active role. The reality is we can have that sort of service on 24/7 and can make sure that it's always being updated with the most recent information. So I think there are places where we can't say it's going to completely not eliminate the need for certain roles, but I would say in large part, again, it's more an assistant than it is, in our view, a replacement.
That makes sense. So as you think about 2024, what are you really excited about? Like, what are you seeing? What's going to be different? Give us a view of 2024 versus, I guess, prior years.
I'm going to talk about actually what was inspired this week. A lot of the conversations that I've had with a number of different partners, and we really talked a lot about power of attention. And it's been resurfaced like the last year or two, but now I feel like it's really reaching like a critical mass standpoint. And not only that, but I feel like our teams internally are starting to get it a little bit more. Being in a CPG, no surprise, ROI is and has been king, right? It's how a lot of our budgets get determined. It's delivering a positive ROI, you get money. If it's not delivering a positive ROI, you don't. But I think that we've all learned and seen what the trade-offs of that can be when you're making a pure efficiency play. You wind up buying hyper-targeted audiences with super cheap inventory that may or may not be seen, but through an MTA study looks good from an ROI standpoint because of the way that the process works. It leads that person to ultimately buy. Whereas a new buyer, they didn't really see it didn't make a difference, right? So I think our people get that. Things like what the A&A has done, their study this past year, kind of shining a light on how much inventory was running towards MFAs and things of that nature, how even a lot of private marketplace deals that agencies or companies have, I think are helping them get to exclusive inventory, are still tens of thousands of websites in size, which is like, kind of goes against what they were supposed to be. But that's what the ROI model, I think, kind of led us into those places. So bringing it back to balance and really having a keener focus on attention. A lot of our partners are talking to us about how they can bring attention metrics to us, how they can kind of quantify those in terms of business results. To me, that's a really exciting thing because it gets back to what we're talking about, the heart of all of this, which is delivering better consumer experiences. It's like, and that's what I want our ad investment to do. It's like, that's what it's out there to do. Like, it sounds old-fashioned, like the world's come full circle, but we're out there trying to make an impression, trying to win hearts and minds. And I think attention is a way that we actually start kind of getting more back to that core versus just, a metric of efficiency.
Yeah, I think for me in the CX space, we've been on this 4.5 year journey now of completely transforming the way that we want to show up and add value for our consumers. And it started with establishing that consumer data strategy, and then it gets into integrated marketing. How do we make sure that we're showing up across channels in a moment, surrounding the consumer, the multiplier effect of channels working together to win in a moment. Data science is sort of the next stage in that journey, establishing the infrastructure, focus on what are the data signals that exist and how do we leverage those signals in an advantaged way to drive advantage growth in those moments versus getting into a shouting match with other competitors. And all of that to ultimately optimize one-to-one lifetime value. So the reason we started down this path 4.5 years ago is because we believe if we can get these pieces right, we are going to see across our enterprise proprietary advantage growth in a proprietary way. So as I look ahead, one of the challenges that building this kind of infrastructure always surfaces is how do you get your hands-on keyboard marketers to actually be able to leverage all the infrastructure and have the knowledge of how this can work to the team's advantage. And so as I look ahead, I'm super excited about some of the progression, some of the progress I'm seeing in NLP, natural language processing, when it comes to enabling journey orchestration, for example. I've seen some things from different partners like Salesforce, where your average hands-on keyboard marketer no longer needs to understand AMP scripting, needs to have access to the tool to actually go in and build the personalization out and understand all the different APIs that are necessary to enable the experience, but rather just speak to the machine. You tell the machine that I want day one a consumer to receive this experience. If they open that email or if they click on that ad, day 2 they get this experience. Day 5 they get this experience. Day 10 they get that. They don't need to have any programming knowledge. They don't have to worry about how all the data is connected in. But the infrastructure sitting there, they can literally spell out exactly what they want and have it built and deployed. And I think that for me is everything, because otherwise you're trying to hire not just brand managers, but you're trying to hire a brand manager and a digital expert to live side by side all the time, and it's just not reasonable. So yeah, as I look ahead, I think there's huge potential.
Yeah, I just want to build on that a little bit. I mean, what's exciting in terms of where we are in our transformation journey is that the markets are ready for this. They're hungry for it, right? So if you think like the last couple of years, it's been a lot of, they start with educating. If you start to go through the initial pains of actually trying to get some of these things like just set up and embedded a little bit. And now we're at the point where I think everybody really gets it. Everyone's done like some level of work on it. And now all the focus is on, all right, how do we take everything that we're doing and just like turn it up a little bit? And there's like a system of teams being able to work together to kind of like lean in, figure those things out, and just like truly be getting better. So I feel like we're very much like right now like on the upslope in terms of seeing a lot more embedding new behaviors, markets kind of delivering to the level of personalization and precision that we kind of hoped for when we got started on this. So I think it's going to be a good year that way for us. So I'm excited to see our markets like really embracing it.
Well, by the way, thank you so much for basically calling out the Kargo value proposition as the only scale SSP with 100% no MFA sites involved. So appreciate that, and I'll take it.
Not an accident.
Since I'm always Debbie Downer, what are the missteps that you're seeing in the market, or the key learnings of things? I think everything, when you look back, most of it's rosy, most of it's positive, but there were like learnings from the shit that went wrong, or basically investments that didn't pan out. What would be a couple of the things that you think from a market perspective, not even with you guys in general, but you're seeing you across, that we should course correct going into 2024 and beyond?
Yeah, I'll give one example. A lot of our transformation journey has been, our markets are so, we're both in the global group. We're a pretty lean team, about 30 folks, and we cover every brand, every market around the globe. And so the work that we do, we can't build it in sort of a central way and just expect everybody to immediately adopt the standard. We have to actually lean into the markets. And so we've done work that 30-week engagements where we'll lean in and teach a team on the ground in a market how to run agile. 2-week sprints, we're building their user stories, assigning work to teams, and actually leaving them when we walk away after 30 weeks with the full competency around how to actually manage digital the way it needs to be done today. I think one of the challenges that we experienced in this is when you go into a market. 3 years ago, we did a data science initiative in one of our markets, and then the office moves and half the team is gone, and so all this work that you did to sort of land a new capability feels like you kind of went out the door with the team. And so as I look ahead, I think we're never going to get away from a place where we have to train the individuals on the ground how to actually embrace digital and do digital, run experiences, leverage data, and it's the real-time nature of that way that's going to be most impactful. But I would say there's also an opportunity to create a clearer standard and build an expectation through our executive leadership team that allows that standard to be pulled into the regions and then into the market, so that if a team leaves, that standard stays, and everybody knows as a new team comes in that they're pulling from that standard. It won't work for everything because there's obviously nuance in terms of some of the capabilities and how those come to life within markets. But I think it would save some heartburn for sure if we were able to get to a place closer to that.
Yeah, I think I guess for a learning from us, I think we were caught a little bit off guard. I honestly say a little bit off guard because we had a retail media role within our organization. We were kind of there, but I think we were still surprised by the way that took off, the way that it did in terms of the percent of spend that it's become of our overall mix in a short period of time. I've never seen any channel in history grow that quickly. I mean, including like social and online video and those kinds of things. So, I think we've had to learn how to manage through that as an organization between sales teams and marketing teams and approach investment more holistically. And with retail media, I think activated beyond just on-site search and actually activate across other channels and take a full funnel approach to retail media. I think the good thing about that lesson, again, it happened in the US and the biggest market, but this is only going to continue and spread around the globe. So I think we've been able to kind of gather learnings from what happened in the US and get ahead of it in some of the other regions as they're about to grow really rapidly as well.
That's super interesting when you think about just the accelerated ramp of retail media. And probably, most organizations would almost, I would call it too far in, but I would say without the actual best practices around sort of the activation and knowing what's really working well and what maybe needs to be thought. Because they're all in and then sort of measurement becomes even less important to you until long after the fact.
It's kind of scary when you have people with no media experience planning billions and billions of dollars worth of media. So that's been fixed since it kind of got started. That's how it was initially. There was like no quality control check on it. There were very little, but we've got it more in place now.
And I think the other thing I'll build is that I think with all of the focus on clean rooms and activation, it actually makes this landscape a lot messier for everybody. Because what we're finding is we're needing to manage identity, we're needing to manage frequency in so many different ways now to make sure that we're not overspending with some of our core audiences. So it's exciting because we can get that much closer to the transaction, and if we can actually get access to the data we want access to, it's a great lever for us to pull. But I think we're finding that some of our ambition in the space is even surpassing some of the retail work we're working with in terms of how nascent their environments are at this point. So.
Yeah, and they're just learning to do it. I was going to open this up for questions, but I think we ran out of one quick question. Okay, one question, and then we'll cut it off. All right, so just to rephrase the question, super question to you, Brad. How are you going to think about the future of a cookieless world where you are thinking about that at the center of excellence versus potentially your agency thinking about that, given that they're planning and sort of running the media?
Yeah, I mean, well, like I said, we were out in front of it from the very beginning, right? So we were writing perspectives on what we wanted our teams to be doing, how they needed to be thinking about it from the center, from the very beginning. And we basically had a series of white papers that we issued, global inspiration session calls, where anyone could dial in and kind of talk about how we're preparing, tracking, test and learns, promoting new activities, new cookieless solutions. So we take on a lot of that in the center. So it's not just like the agencies telling the stories, but it's us being connected with all of our markets around the world, understanding the stories, and us being able to socialize those and scale across our organization.
I think we have to wrap up there. Thank you so much for joining.